My name is Mably Davis, and I am presenting this vlog based on the topic of policing issues within the cases of domestic violence. 1 in 5 adults experience domestic abuse in their lifetime, which equates to 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 to 7 men, with several cases remaining hidden across the UK. The purpose of this vlog is to critically analyse the challenges that police face when identifying and responding to cases of domestic abuse in both historical and contemporary perspectives. Police forces have the requirement to prevent crime and disorder. Domestic violence causes both. Domestic abuse is one of the most significant demands on police resources, with reports and cases on the rise. A 2019 analysis of data from 2000 to 2018 across 161 countries conducted by WHO indicated that globally about 1 in 3 women worldwide have been subjected to sexual violence. This also includes physical and verbal. Alongside this, the Crime Survey for England and Wales in March 2019 identified 2.4 million adults aged 16 to 74 years that experienced domestic abuse in the last year. Therefore, this vlog will outline the historical context within the police, the contemporary policing of domestic abuse, police attitudes and evidence, and it will then discuss a critical analysis of police work, following with solutions and strategies that could benefit the future of police departments when dealing with domestic abuse cases. Domestic abuse has always been visible within history, from early Roman law allowing men to beat or murder their wife for their offences committed by them, to the Catholic Church rules of marriage in the 15th century, whereby a man could stand as judge of his wife. Only up until the 1870s, states in America began to ban the rights of a man beating his wife, and by the 1980s most states had gained legislation about domestic violence. Since then, multi-agency work has become the main approach to tackling domestic abuse cases. A timeline focusing on how legal framework has helped change the way domestic violence is tackled is shown here. In 1780, the rule of thumb that is often cited in discussions about domestic abuse in this era refers to a supposed legal or social guideline that a man could beat his wife with a stick or a whip, provided that the stick was no thicker than his thumb. Following this, there were further developments in the Criminal Procedure Act, with eventually the Domestic Abuse Act becoming law in 2021. In the early days of policing, domestic violence was considered too difficult for police. They lacked legal framework, training, and resources to address such cases, and many officers held gender biases that minimised the severity of abuse, especially when it involved women. Over time, however, societal changes such as the women's rights movement and the growing recognition of domestic violence as a criminal issue led to significant reforms. Specialised domestic violence units were also created, whereby officers received training to handle sensitive situations, and mandatory reporting laws ensured a stronger response to such crimes. Modern-day policing now does focus on victim safety and offender accountability, and it has collaboration with social services to provide comprehensive support. Modern-day policing today, we do have a crime and survey-based evidence in England and Wales that shows high levels of patterns of still ongoing domestic abuse. However, with legal and legislative development, there are approaches that have developed to reduce domestic violence and increase convictions. With a focus on Wales, there was the See Me campaign introduced by South Wales Police, a campaign that has highlighted lived experiences of women and girls across South Wales. It's an initiative aimed at raising awareness about domestic abuse and promoting more support for victims. It seeks to challenge attitudes and behaviours that enable abuse, whilst also encouraging communities to act and speak out against domestic violence. The campaign highlights the importance of recognising the signs of abuse and provides support to those affected by reducing stigma. It is part of a broader effort to end violence in relationships and ensure that victims have access to the help and resources they need. It does align with other regional efforts in the UK to increase public understanding of domestic abuse and create safer communities. Clare's Law was introduced in 2014 within the UK. It allows individuals to request information about a partner's history of domestic violence. It was named after Claire Wood, who was murdered by an abusive partner in 2009. The law provides 2 main provisions: the right to ask, where anyone can request a check on their partner's criminal history, and the right to know, where information is disclosed if a partner poses a risk. The aim was to help people make informed decisions about their relationships and prevent future domestic abuse. It has now been expanded across England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Evidence of a police failure, however, regarding to Clare's law was the failure of police officers in Wiltshire, who provided incorrect information to a woman about a potential partner. It then became clear that he had a past of domestic abuse, and this led to eventually the suspension of police staff. This does show how beneficial it is to help women know what kind of relationship they might be getting into. We also need to look at coercive control in cases today. Coercive control is a critical concept in policing domestic abuse cases. It refers to the pattern of behaviours by an abuser intended to dominate them through manipulation, intimidation, and isolation. It can involve criminal offences such as rape, threats to kill, and criminal damage and burglary. It was officially recognised in the UK as a criminal offence under Section 76 of the Serious Crime Act of 2015. It has the potential to change the way the criminal justice system deals with intimate partner abuse for the better. It could therefore help police safeguarding teams understand the challenges that survivors face when trying to engage within the criminal justice system process. The inclusion of its legal aspects require police to adapt to procedures. Gathering evidence, increasing the use of gathering evidence, such as financial records, witness statements, and messages even, are highly important, especially with technological advances today. Alongside this, it emphasises a victim-centred approach whereby police should assess the victim's experience on a larger scale rather than only singular incidents. Risk assessments are also very important to understand the risks posed by an abuser. Police attitudes and evidence. Police responses to domestic violence in the UK show a reluctance to intervene unless the violence was considered serious. An ethnographic study of police responses to domestic violence suggested that it falls into the category of a social service-related job regarded as rubbish. Such attitudes suggest patriarchal attitudes, sexism, and law enforcement not taking this seriously. The College of Policing did advise first response officers that they should be able to recognise the sign of abuse and identify criminal offences to bring to justice. There should be an increase of training of this. Chu and Sun proposed that police attitudes towards domestic violence could be clustered into two global domains: proactive attitudes to consider domestic violence interventions as important police work, and reactive attitudes to provoke the tolerance of domestic violence cases. Most recently, scholars have been able to introduce negative components of police attitudes towards an effective legal system response, and a negative view in some cases of out-of-control victims. Police are also showing that they want to enhance their response to serial perpetrators. A task group involving the MPCC, led for management of sexual and violent offenders, and the Home Office are currently developing other options to manage this. The Crown Prosecution Service has also developed a better best practice for the magistrates' courts, whereby they face challenges such as the length of trials. A 2014 report reported alarming and unacceptable weaknesses in the policing of domestic abuse. However, despite this, there has been an 180% increase in the reporting by victims, which does show a positive light to police work. Research, however, has often questioned the links between the attitudes of officers and their actions at scenes of domestic-related calls for service, especially when arresting the perpetrator. Studies have tried to identify situational characteristics of incidents that either favour or disfavour arrests. A study by Johnson and Dye conducted that the predictors of arrest have been legal, such as if there is evidence, whether they are serious, and whether a victim wants to make a complaint. Another report by the HMICROS reported that a police force in Wales needs to improve its dealings with domestic abuse cases. There were 230 cases that were found to have found the incorrect level of risk applied, and in more serious cases such as strangulation, threats to kill, and rape. This was a major police failing and has since improved itself. We also need to focus on critical analysis of policing domestic abuse cases. The HMICFRS report that was released on July 19, 2024, highlighted key issues in UK policing, especially regarding violence against women and girls. Despite an overall decline in crime rates, Violence against women and girls remains prevalent, with police struggling to respond promptly, investigate incidents, and bring offenders to justice. The report also criticises delays in the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, showing a 301% rise in public requests, but there's still being significant backlogs in processing them within court. Prosecutions for victim-based offences, including domestic abuse and rape, however, have sharply declined, compounded by court backlogs and a failing legal aid system. The report also calls for a whole society approach to tackle violence against women and girls, which does not only involve the law enforcement and police, but other sectors such as education and health. Despite progress, there are still gaps in how police handle domestic abuse cases. One of the primary concerns is the underreporting of incidents, often due to victims' fear of not being believed or being further victimised by the criminal justice system. The police have made strides with specialist domestic abuse units and the implementation of policies such as the Domestic Violence Protection Order, which is designed to offer immediate protection to victims. However, studies highlight persistent issues including inconsistent training, inadequate understanding of coercive control, and delays in gathering evidence. These can undermine the effectiveness, therefore, of police intervention. Research also indicates that some victims feel that police responses can be dismissive, particularly in cases involving emotional or psychological abuse, which can lead to a low confidence in the system. This is often in cases where there is a lack of physical evidence. By improving communication, victim support, and accountability for officers, we can therefore address these issues and ensure better outcomes for the victims of domestic abuse. To conclude this vlog, we're going to look at recommendations and suggestions that could benefit police work when dealing with cases of domestic abuse. To conclude, it is evident that domestic abuse remains a hidden crisis that demands urgent action. This vlog has aimed to explore how domestic abuse cases are dealt with by the police. In order to improve how police deal with domestic abuse cases, there firstly needs to be a better system and an increase in victim-focused policies. Alongside this, an expansion of specialised units within police forces with more abuse-focused teams could benefit the awareness of how serious these cases can become. Despite there being multiple helplines and organisations available to victims, there needs to be an increase of police advertising that they can help. It is evident that reasons as to why victims don't speak out there, as there is often a lack of trust by the police, the fear of being rejected by the system itself, and the fear of getting caught the reporting of a case by a potential violent partner. Potentially, by creating more safe spaces within police stations and also public areas, victims could feel a lot safer to speak out and hope to be taken seriously. Thus, officers should be trained to approach victims with empathy and sensitivity, which creates an environment where survivors feel safe to disclose their experiences. The collaboration with social services, legal advocates, community organisations could ensure a more inclusive support system for victims, which addresses both immediate safety and long-term needs. Following up on the specialised domestic abuse units, there should also be follow-up protocols which could improve case outcomes and demonstrate a commitment to addressing this issue, rather than a police or a police force addressing a case of domestic abuse a singular time. Also, through the utilisation of modern technology, such as digital reporting tools and evidence collection apps, we could also quicken the progress for victims and strengthen cases against a partner. With regular audits and community feedback, there also could be evidence of further refining police practices, which could help towards the public putting more trust into how police could help their case.